A favorite topic to tackle in the 90s, usually in kids' cartoons, was sexism. I don't particularly know why, it just seemed to be a theme that they like using. Most cartoons had at least one episode dedicated to this, and far and wide, they turned out to be bad. Not Stuck in the Ringer bad, but nobody doesn't like TJ bad. The formula was this. One character says that the other sex is bad, inferior, or weak, or whatever. The characters have said other sex proceed to beat him or her at some challenge to prove equality. If you look closely at the plotline I just laid out, you can already see the biggest problem that plagues this story type. If we follow the logic that the episode itself sets up, then the sex of the character that manages to win the challenge is the best, according to the episode. 9 times out of 10, this is what these episodes amount to. But Operation Future managed to be that rare 10th episode that actually managed to do a sexism plotline correctly. I wish I could dedicate more time to giving some background to the show itself, but I need to get into the nitty-gritty of things here quickly. This episode, like most of the best KND episodes, is 22 minutes long and is high concept. This particular concept is a dystopian future, a trope that I personally really like. It's my favorite brand of the time travel plot. Yeah, this episode is a time travel story. Another one that's extremely hard to get right. They don't succeed as much in that regard, but that's not what this review is about. We'll have some time to talk about time travel in the future when I actually find a reasonable example for it. The episode starts with number 4 saying that he has to go to a boarding school, and then he claims that he can get out of there by midnight. It turns out that this particular boarding school is high security, and run by a headmistress, Madame Margaret.
Oh, you boys can be so charmingly direct. Well, we'll soon cure you of that.
Immediately, it seems like they're falling into the trap that I established earlier. That typical plotline relies heavily on using a straw man, a character that exists just to be proven wrong.
Johnny, I sense that you are in the thinking that you are a man about town, whose sole purpose is to bother woman.
You see this a lot in Seth MacFarlane shows, and in this plot type. The character that says that one sex is worse than the other for no other reason than to be proven wrong. And before you ask, yes, previously established characters can become straw men in a particular episode. Stan Smith. To the untrained eye, straw men look like the perfect way to convey a message. To them, it's like saying that this person is undisputably wrong. Trust me, you don't want to do that. Straw men are not good at conveying a message or even proving a point. It's like building a tower with a really flimsy base and knocking it down to show how strong you are. It doesn't make you strong, it makes you a fraud. Now, obviously, anyone who realistically holds the idea that one sex is inferior to the other is going to be immediately unlikable. And what better role for them than the villain? In this episode, Madame Margaret is the sexist, but she has absolutely nothing to do with the moral except for creating the catalyst for it. Her plan is turning all of the boys in the world into girls using a specially designed laser gun. Number 4 manages to get out of there with minimal damage, and he decides to call for help, before thinking better of it. Then we see a bright flashback at the headquarters, which is going to factor into some confusion later, but I digress. We see that Madame Margaret has a device that allows her to talk to her future self.
Traveling through the time stream to ensure a boy-free future.
Yep, she's the villain of the episode. Were you expecting me to say something about her? Her plan is evil. And yes, it would probably lead to the end of the world. Maybe. After she's almost succeeded with her plan, there are still children in the future for some reason. Number 4 interrupts the call, and Madame Margaret is discovered to be a robot controlled by a little girl. And yes, this was very well foreshadowed.
With the help of my future self, the world will soon be a better place!
And people say that Pokemon X and Y was a little on the nose with the symbolism. Well, if you're gonna make someone undisputably bad, go all the way, I suppose. Number 4 gets attacked, but he manages to take the laser and breaks it. We find out that it was a present from her future self. Upon learning this, Number 4 manages to get away. Almost. Apparently, the school can move. Number 4 tries calling headquarters, but everyone there seems to be affected by this transforming power. Even Number 5, who was already a girl. Except the tomboy. Now, that's really interesting. That's another hurdle that these episodes all too often face. I was going to review Witch a Woman from Johnny Bravo for this particular reason. On top of one sex being better than the other according to the episode's logic, the sex could only be better by playing into its stereotypes. All of its stereotypes. Needless to say that's a very bad way to do this plotline. Like, that is literally the worst way you could do this type of episode, unless you're Teen Titans Go. We cut to 75 years into the future, and we see Madame Margaret's perfect world. That's not so perfect. In this future, Number 4 failed to defeat Madame Margaret, and girls rule the world. The kids next door become the boys next door, which is definitely a clever way to continue using the show's formula that anyone watching would be familiar with. Madame Margaret is building a giant cannon that would basically mean victory for her. This kid's orientation is interrupted by Timmy Turner.
My way! I've got vital information for the Resistance!
And apparently she's a girl in disguise, and the granddaughter of number 3. We see that although number 4 didn't defeat Madame Margaret, he's still alive and he got older. The girl's name is Sally, and she has high hopes to stop this tyranny, and thinks the only way to do that is to help the boys next door. She brought them one of those lasers in hopes that they could reverse engineer it.
Boys and girls can work together. Starting now!
In an episode like this, it's not the message that's important, but who it comes from. We all know what the message is going to be, but it's important to have at least one character from each side realize this. You cannot defeat sexism with reverse sexism, and you can't create a moral on a similar premise. It just crumbles and falls apart. Unfortunately, Madame Margaret put a tracer on Sally, and is using it to follow her to the boys next door. But we see that the other guys have managed to reverse the laser. Unfortunately, they're running out of time, so number 4 and Sally decide to go get some more. It's time for a good old-fashioned climax. They're not there to win anything, just provide a distraction for number 4 and Sally to get inside the castle. And it isn't long before Margaret gets every last one of them, because her big gun is ready to be fired. Number 4 breaks into Margaret's castle and uses her time machine, to which Sally soon after destroys. Number 4 appears back at the treehouse in the past, making it very confusing why everyone there changed a little bit later. But I digress. He says that number 4 is in trouble, and the others aren't willing to listen until number 3 defends him. They manage to save number 4 in the nick of time, and then they all assault the castle with their robot that is unaffected by the cannons. Once the time machine is destroyed, everything goes back to normal. Yeah, like I said, it doesn't do everything on the time travel aspect right. If the time machine was destroyed in the past, how did number 4 get back to the past in the future? Then again, in a time travel plot, if you do everything perfect with logic, you're probably not going to have much of a story afterwards. And that was Operation Future. Considering how many of these shows do this story type wrong, it's pretty impressive that they not only pulled it off, but made it one of the best episodes of the show. Not my favorite episode, but it's still up there. I really like episodes that prove that some kind of story type is not impossible. You know, like that Nobody Doesn't Like TJ episode I reviewed? Of course they got that plot wrong. Everyone gets that plot wrong. But what this episode could teach us is, there's always a way to do these difficult to tackle plots. Sometimes it just takes a post-apocalyptic future and some evil Terminator girls.